Next up, we have our list of users, and you could totally do a little bit more with these and show a little bit more data. We'll just keep it simple. We'll show the username only. But next, let's open up our user routing. And here, we already created two routes, right? We have our user list component, which that's what this is. And then we also have our component for user single, and that's going to be /username. In our case, that'll be right here. So we'll copy this EasyMobius /EasyMobius, and that'll show user single. Now this shows the user single component, but we haven't really done anything with it. We need to grab the route parameter here for username, and then we're going to use the user service to go to the GitHub API and grab this user's information. And then we need to show that in the user single template. So let's go ahead and open up the user single component here. Now let's do a couple placeholders, right? We have to, one, grab the username out of the URL. Then two, we need to use the user service to get data from GitHub API. And then we need to bind that to a user variable that we have on our class. And let's do that now. That's the easy part, user. Next, we need to get the user service, so private user service. And notice the import already happened thanks to VS Code. Now we have the user service, and let's do the call here. So this .user service .get user, but we have to pass in a username here. And notice, look how VS Code is helping us out by documenting what we're about to do. We have to get user, and it can look at that user service and say, hey, you want a username, but it has to be a string. So we're going to put a string in here, and let's do EasyMobius. And I'm just going to unwrap this ourselves. We're going to subscribe, and we're going to say user. This .user is equal to user. And that comment goes up here. All right, so we should have this user. Now we just need to show it. So we're going to say user, and let's pipe it to the JSON pipe. All right, we have EasyMobius here. Our application went ahead and found the user service, found the API call, and went to go grab EasyMobius. But this is just a string, right? We are typing this in directly. We have to get this out of the URL. To do that, we're going to use the Angular router, which helps us do these things. So in our constructor, I'm going to break this out multiple lines. We're going to add a new dependency called private route, and we're going to pull the activated route. And that's going to be the current route that is coming from Angular. And if you're looking for that activated route from @Angular/router. Now, the thing that you'll come to learn from Angular is that a lot of the parts of Angular are observables. And since they're observables, we have to subscribe to them. We can't just say, let's say const username is equal to this.route.params.username. We can't really do that. And the reason being is if this changes, Angular tries to be very, very performant, so it will reuse a component. So if we are, let's say we are clicking between one user to the next, and the route changes, this won't change because we're not subscribing to the observable. For Angular to be performant, it wants to reuse the component, and that's why this won't change, because we're using the same instance of a component. So we're going to actually subscribe to this.route.params. And let's do this.route.params. And see, that returns an observable. Observable right here. So we'll say subscribe. And then we get params out of that. Now we can say const username is equal to params username. And I should have done that as the array right there, but now we have the username, and then we can use this.service here. My formatter is doing some weird formatting for me, but let's take this username, and instead of EasyMobius, we'll put that right there. Now we're able to get everything as we expect it to, and then let's even one-line this to get a little bit cleaner. All right, so now we have this user service, get user with the username, and once we subscribe to it, we'll pass in this.user is equal to user, and we bound it to this user property right here. We can easily see we've injected the user service and the activated route. So let's save this. We have Easy Mobius. Okay. Now let's zoom out a little bit. Go back to users. Oh, those aren't even links. We need to have links for these. But let's copy this and then paste in defunct. And defunct works as well. That's how our user single component will work. Let's quickly clean up our template right here. We're just going to start with a section class section. And then we'll have a container inside of that. Div class card. And we only want to show this if we have a user. Now we want to have an image. Now what's the source going to be? Source is going to come out of here. And oh, look, we already have avatar URL out of this object. So we're going to say user.avatar_URL. And the way that this works is if you want to bind to an attribute, you use the brackets. And I know we talked about it a little bit, but there's actually 3 different template things that Angular gives us. And let's go over them real quick. We're going to have property bindings, which is the brackets. And that's if you want to get data from a class into your template. And that's what we're doing here. We have something that we want to bind into the template. You have event bindings, which is the parentheses, and we saw that on the form submit. So that's if you want to listen for events on the template, and then you want to pass data from the template into your class. So that's one-way data bound here, and then that's one-way data bound here. And then you also have the star, which is the structural directive if you want to update your HTML based on your variables and different properties. Now, these 3 template binding things are actually good enough to get you going with Angular. And I think it's really helpful to see because these property bindings go from class to template. These event bindings go from template to class. Structural directives change the HTML around. And that's why when we did our forms, that's why when we did our forms, you saw the double ng model because it does both ways. It does 2-way data binding, one from the template to the class, one from the class to the template. So that's just a little crash course on Angular's templates. All right, where were we? We bound to the source, okay? And then also we are going to use h2 user.login. And that's the final part of our templates is the interpolation. And that's just, if you want to show text, you use the double curly braces. So save that, and we have defunct, and we have the user profile there. So if we go open this up, users, oh, those aren't clickable yet. Let's make that clickable real quick. User list component. We want this card to be, I don't know, let's make their name clickable. So we'll say a router link is equal to /users/user.login. And now it is a link with user/their username. So you notice they are all clickable. Van Pelt, cool, users. All right, so now we have routed to 2 different sections. We are able to use the ng on init and the user service to get data. And we're able to show that data with our templates.